Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Wimborne. I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Before we start, I just wanted to mention that my 2024 calendar is now available for pre-order on my website. All pre-orders will be hand-signed by me and the first 50 orders will be at a discounted price. Head to grantswinburnephotography.com to check it out. Jack Lodge is a professional landscape photographer and workshop leader from Dorset in the southwest of UK. Through his landscape photography, Jack strives to capture the changes of each season, documenting the landscape as the weather and light shifts. His landscape photography varies from enchanting ancient woodlands in the heart of the Dorset countryside to dramatic seascapes across the iconic Jurassic Coast. Landscape photography is Jack's way of being able to capture moments in time, landscapes which tell a story that will last forever. He's a firm believer in printing his work, bringing the digital form to life through tactile papers, and has seen his prints, box sets and calendars shipped internationally. We explore his love for the breathtaking landscapes of the Jurassic Coast, his love of capturing places for people who can't be there, how his workshops work, image licensing, pricing, along with a lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Jack. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Hey, Grant. How you doing? Thanks for having me on board. I'm so excited to have a good chat with you.
I'm very excited to talk to you too. Love seeing some of your work on the socials. Why don't we start with you telling us who you are and why you do what you do?
Awesome. Oh, thank you. So, my name's Jack. I'm from a little place called Dorset in the south coast of the UK. And I got a bit of a different background. I started in architecture. So my profession was in the architecture profession. I went to uni, got a camera for a little bit, as you do. So I started with street photography, a bit of travel. Yep. And ever since, I've escalated it year on year. And I quit my job last August. So I'm now full-time landscape nature photography. So I run workshops and tuition, sell prints, and living the dream at the moment. I feel very lucky.
Fantastic. It's great to talk to somebody that is living the dream. And
it's a proper pinch yourself moment. Every time you're out with the camera, I'm like, really? Is this really happening?
Is this really what I do for a living now?
I'm like, this is not a job. I'm just like out enjoying the outdoors. It's a very addictive thing.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about. It. Why photography, and in particular, why landscape photography and nature photography?
Oh, I love the why questions. They really get me going. I think it's because I've always had a love of the outdoors, whether I'm walking with my parents at the weekend when I was a kid or just exploring with my dog. And when I was at uni, I went on a few trips abroad and I started doing architectural and street photography because that's what one of our assignments was. Sure. And I did a sunrise in Venice at Blue Hour, my first ever sunrise. And this must have been 2014 when I got my first camera. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm pretty sure it was in like aperture priority or something. And I was addicted. I was like slowing down the shutter speed. And I was like, oh my God, I'm capturing this 10 minutes of light that's like completely blue. Mm-hmm. And within half an hour, everyone was up and around. And I was like, that split, like kind of that hour time period, I was on my own, enjoying the outdoors. And I was like, this is awesome. And then it was on and off for about 3 years until 2017 when I graduated, got my first full-time job, and I treated myself to a camera. And I was like, I'm in an office job now, 9 to 5. I need to get back out in nature. So I forced myself to do sunrises and sunsets between work hours. And I just loved it. It was like this big de-stressing tool. And it's just grown from there, really. And I find like every time I'm out, if I get a picture, it's a bonus. Which is a weird thing to say because I'm obviously going out for a photo, but it's almost like I'm just enjoying the moment and then the photography is there to share it with others, which I find really rewarding.
Yeah, great. I guess I'm interested in asking people around what their process is for their creativity. And are you a planner? Are you more spontaneous? Do you pre-visualize the scene that you want to share, or are you just more, okay, I see that, the light's happening, I'm going to take that shot now?
Love this. Yeah, I'm a proper planner. So like my work is very much focused on the seasons. So I'm always planning for the future season ahead. And then I'm always thinking of different locations and I'm pre-visualizing the conditions. So The more I've done it, the more fussy I've got. So the better the light has to be, the better the mist, the atmosphere, the composition for me to even take my camera out of the bag. And I find the chase really rewarding. I've got some photos that are like a set from spring through to autumn, winter, and they've taken me about 4 or 5 years. And it's going back that is really addictive. Yeah, I'm a proper planner, and then they're all in here. I've got loads of photos that I'm yet to capture, as we all do, right?
Absolutely.
I've got to just wait for the right conditions. But sometimes you know what it's like when you're out with a camera and you go out with a vision, and then you end up photographing something completely different, right? Because the light's doing something. It's awesome, isn't it? You just get distracted by everything that's going
on. Sometimes for me, that's a deliberate choice. Other times it's just opportunism. It's, I've got to take that.
Yeah, and you never really know. If you go out with a clear vision, I find sometimes that's when I'm most creative.
Yeah.
Because I'm not restricted to a lens. I'm just like, I'm going to take all the lenses. Because you know what it's like. The one lens you want is the one you leave at home. Yeah. So your bag's heavy, but it means you can react to anything that's going on, can't you?
Yeah, too right. Do you think it's important to have goals in your photography, particularly now that it's more than just a hobby?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I've always been a bit of a goal setter. I think because I've always loved business and marketing. Now it's a full-time kind of job. It's nice to have that balance of a bit of everything. I always set goals, visions, some of them probably completely unachievable, but they're there. And once they're written down, I find it easy to plan things, whether it is a goal of a certain photo or to visit a certain place or to work with a certain like company or to travel in a certain season. I just have all these goals, but I think it's really important, especially for landscape photography, because it's quite easy to get into a rut. And I've been in a few of them where, especially in summer over here in the UK, it's hard.
Dawn is not a easy shot.
It's awful. So it's horrible. At the minute, the heather's looking amazing. So that's a distraction for me. So I don't mind the 3 o'clock alarm. But about 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, when there wasn't much out there, there was a bit of barley and wheat, but the 3 o'clock alarm, I was like, I'm not feeling. That's not all right. That's not a morning. That's nighttime.
That's it. Yeah, that's sleep time. Not.
Gosh, yeah. So I struggled with summer. So my goal last year or the year before, was to get into wildlife photography. So it's something I've picked up now alongside landscapes because in the summer it's perfect. So that was a little goal that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, fantastic. In terms of projects, having those goals, do you turn them into projects themselves as either portfolio pieces or sets of images that you want to collect? So it might be, let's say, a summer series of animals. Is that something that you're putting together as part of your portfolio, or is it more disjointed than that?
No, I think you're right. There is individual like projects, whether it's I do an annual calendar, something as small as that, or in the background things like books or portfolio boxes. And I've done seasonal themed prints before. It might take me a year to capture a seasonal collection of say 3 or 4 prints, but for me, then if I can sell those as a limited set that kind of shows how much work went into it and tell a bit of a backstory, I see that as a little project sometimes. But yeah, I always like to convert goals into projects, whether it's something small or a bigger vision or something. But sometimes they're not the ones that I sit down and plan. They just seem to pop up and happen. It's quite reactive, I'd say.
Yeah, okay. Have you got anything particular on the boil at the moment?
Yeah, I've got a continuous project at the moment based on the seasons. So it's a long-term thing. I've got a small version. I've got an ebook version on the way. And then I've also got the big goal is to have a portfolio book or something that kind of embodies everything I believe in, my kind of passion, and hopefully that people can pick up and they see it's me. It's not just a normal book. It's this is Jack's book, or it's got something, and I don't know how to do it quite yet, but it's one of those ongoing things.
Yeah. I guess I'm interested in when things started to click for you in terms of it being art versus being recording, because usually what happens is people go out with the camera and with an intent to take images, but usually it's just recording what they're doing or recording a scene that they've seen. And quite often at that early stage, it's not about making art. When did turning it into art happen for you, and what was the thinking and process behind that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think because of my background in architecture, that I've always had a vision when it comes to anything really, whether it is a building or a piece of art or something. So I'm always inspired by anything really, and I always try to look past something and look into it a little bit into more detail and see, oh, what was the artist or creator thinking when they did this? So I feel like when it comes to my work, I'm then always looking to capture something a little bit different. And I guess it is art. What we do is art, right? So whether it's a certain light coming through the woodland or whether it's a certain wave that makes you feel like you're going to get wet from just looking at the picture, it's capturing that as best as I can. And the technical side of things, I'm not too worried about. I get it a lot in like camera club talks and things about, oh, it's got to be like rule of thirds, or why is your horizon not on the top? Why is it in the middle? And I'm like, I'm not even thinking about those things at the first stage of the photograph. I'm thinking more about how can I capture this scene as best as I can. And then in the back of my head, I'm thinking of those. It's a really good question, because I think the art always comes first, even though I'm a massive tech head. I love gear. I love computers, all that type of thing. But the art definitely comes first. So that's, really good question. And I think for me, it doesn't become real until I print it, because I'm a massive believer in printing. So even before I share my work on social media, I'll make sure that I print the image, have it out, or have it on my wall, and at least I can look at it for a few hours before I even share it. And I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah. In terms of your engagement in social media, are you trying to work to a consistent schedule there, or are you just putting stuff out as it's finished because it's got to be a certain quality before you'll even put it near your feed?
It's got to be one of those special things. I'm one of those I'm happy if I get one really good picture a month. That's a portfolio piece, but I'll still share everything, because I think it's really important for people to see your okay photos, or the photos that you went out and it's not quite like the best image ever, but you captured something. And for me, the social media kind of thing is, I guess that's where kind of I've got to is through social media, right? Because Instagram, Facebook is where we all grow, or it's where I grew, especially. And when people comment from all over the world and they say, oh, Jack, you've made my day, or that was a place I visited with my late father, or all that type of thing, I'm like, I'm doing more than just taking photos for me. I'm actually capturing pictures for people that might not be able to get to these places or see them at 5 a.m.
That's right. Yeah.
And I love that, because I absolutely love that. Social media is really powerful for being able to bring people along with me. So I'll post as and when. I love live videos. So I'm one of those where if you follow me, you'll get a notification every other day saying Jack Lodge is live. So sorry for the spam, but I like to take people like a POV of me there. Filming with the camera. Here's what I'm doing. These are the settings I'm using. Try and make people feel a little bit connected to the photograph at the end.
Yeah, fantastic. In terms of that personal expression, what role do you see that playing in your work, and how do you infuse your own style and vision into your images? Everyone talks about trying to find something that's unique. I'm interested in kind of how they think about that. Is it the composition? Is it the colouring? Is it the length of exposure? There's lots of different ways that you can infuse your work with your own feel. What's your method?
Well, it varies a lot. So I'm one of those that when I get asked about presets, I cringe, because I'm like, you said, I don't get it.
I have one preset that I use, and that,
do you? Yeah,
that zeroes everything except clarity and something or other else, and the camera and lens settings. That's it.
Perfect. Yeah, because I just don't get it, because every photo is completely different. So if you're getting a rough idea of what you can do with it, that's fine. But for me, I already know when I'm pressing that button, I know how I'm going to edit the photo, because I've pre-visualized the whole thing. So that's how I do that step. I'm pre-thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to drop the clarity, I'm going to make this feel really warm or really cool, or I'm going to add more of these colors or desaturate these colors. And I'd say my style as such is probably quite punchy. I really do love pastel colors, something that pops off the screen. And I think that's solely because I'm thinking of the print at the end. If I think I want someone to see an image, because as the hardest thing we do is we're seeing this amazing 3D vista, but we're capturing a 2D image on a tiny little sensor. And if we print that and it still feels flat, then I don't think we've done our job as photographers, because we need it to feel like it's coming off the paper. And whether that is light, composition.
You got to feel like you can fall into it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, perfect way to describe it. Way better than I could. Yeah, so you feel like you can fall into the image, right? And to me, that's a really good photo. So if I can make someone look at it and feel like they're there, and if they look at a warm sunrise and they get warm, they get the goosebumps that, I feel that. Or they look at a snowy scene and they get cold. I'm like, I've done my job as a photographer or artist to get that feeling across.
Yeah, fantastic. In terms of being out in the field, you talked about you've started to pre-visualize everything. How do you actually feel while you're shooting? What's going through your mind? What are you experiencing, I guess? Are you thinking hard, or are you getting into that flow state and just relaxing and letting things happen?
I'm so glad you said flow state, because that's one thing I use a lot of the time on my workshops, because at the end, people will be like, Jack, I've not even looked at my phone. I've not even thought about work stress. And I'm like, good, because that's why I go out. I get into this flow state where you're enjoying everything so much, you're not thinking about a single thing. And that's where I get to. I'm a lot of the time not even thinking about the camera settings. It's like, it's cheesy, isn't it? But it's almost an extension of your hand. It's like you're using it as a tool to capture what's in here. You're not worried, how sharp is it going to be? Or all those little things. It just comes naturally when I'm taking a photo. So I've over the time really slowed down. So I'm using like a geared head. I'm really particular with what I'm framing. And that's solely because in the moment, I'm thinking all about that image, and I'm looking around the border of the frame. I'm thinking, if I move 10 centimeters up, that completely changes the feel of the image, or 10 centimeters to the left. And I love that process. It's like a chase. It's really addictive. So when I'm out with the camera, that's all I'm thinking about is how I can best capture a scene. And sometimes I fail, like we all do. Like sometimes I'll think I've done it there, and I'll get home back to the big screen. I'll be like, Jack, you should have done this. And maybe that's because I was too in the moment. Yeah. And I needed to take a step back and slow down a little bit, because it always happens, right?
It almost happens when you're in a rush.
Yeah.
I'm constantly bringing home stuff from a shoot where I've turned up 10 minutes too late, and I'm in a rush to get down to where I want to shoot, and I'm thinking about getting the tripod set up and everything else except actually taking a really good photo when I should have got up earlier, should have done a few other
it's so easily done.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing I get on social media is people say, Jack, I was up for sunrise this morning and it looked nothing like what you captured. Yeah. And I was like, I say to them, what time did you get up? And they're like, I got up like a minute before sunrise. I was like, you missed the sunrise. The colour happened 20, 30 minutes ago. I was like, you were way too late. Like I was up 2 hours ago getting there. You've really got to put in the time, haven't you? And that's the thing.
And also the people, I love shooting sunsets as well, because you have the crowd turn up for the moment the sun disappears. They all disappear, and I've got clear shooting.
And you're staying, right?
For the good bit.
And then you get the good bit. You get the afterglow. You get blue hour. You get all of the good stuff at the end. Yeah, and I think that's why people love photography, because they see those photos and they're like, "How on earth did they get that?" And it's because you weren't there. You didn't see it. It's something you're not used to seeing.
You've got to be there at the right time.
You have. You have. Yeah. Love that.
How do you see your style developing over time? Obviously, you start out with particular ideas and particular ways of processing, particular ways of shooting. How do you see your style has developed, and where do you see it going into the future?
Oh, yeah. So I'd probably say I've got a lot of a more, that doesn't make any sense. But at the moment, I'm more into like pastel colors, almost like a painting feel, and a very soft image. So I'm not one of those that like brings the clarity or texture sliders up too much. If anything, I'm going the other way. I want someone to feel like it's easy on the eyes. I'd probably say back, if I look through some of my old photos, they're probably super contrasty, saturated, quite heavy is probably the best way to describe them. And I'd say my images have got a lot lighter over time.
Yep.
I've often been told my images are sometimes overexposed, and that's fine because it's all personal preference. I love that. That's what photography is all about. For me, that's a kind of something I've done on purpose, because maybe the background wasn't that interesting of that avenue of trees. So I've on purposely overexposed it to give it a foggy, mysterious feel. And I guess it's a technical decision to get a little bit creative. So I'd say my style is always changing. I hope it's recognizable. That's my goal. I'd love my work to be like someone's, what you're doing, the typical swiping, and someone's, I know that's a Jack image. Like, I'd love that. I don't know if I'm there just yet, but I'd love to get there at some point where it's consistent, but each image is different. So it's a continuous battle. How about yourself? Do you find you have a select style, or do you change per image?
I tend to work on the circumstance that I'm in, particularly, say, travel shooting for me, which I love to do, but you're not always guaranteed to be able to get there at a certain time of the day. So you might never be in a place again, and you might not be there at blue hour or golden hour.
Yeah, you've got to make the most of it.
Yeah, my way of thinking there is to, okay, let's slow down time and do some ultra long exposure, put on 16 stops or 13 stops or 10.
Love that.
And get, as long as there's a bit of cloud, you're good. Or if there's water movement or some other kind of movement. I did one recently in the Netherlands, the Zandseeschans, which is windmills. And so it was it was really a bog awful day that we were there.
Typical, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was rainy, it was windy, which was good because the windmills were actually turning.
Yeah. So, and all the cloud and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a bit of cloud, and of course there was wind ripples on the water and whatever. So what I did was I just slowed it down, put 13 stops on, and did some 10 stops and did some 13 stops, and also did some shots at a higher shutter speed so that you still had some detail in the sails. So the sail at 10, they were starting to blur really a lot, and to be honest, a little bit too much to see them properly. Looking at the back of the camera, I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll do some faster shots so that some of the structure is still there, and then blend them together so that you can actually get that feeling of the movement of the sails, the wind and rain and everything. And as you said, hopefully make people feel like they were there.
I love that, because that's like freezing a moment in time and making it feel like it lasts longer. And that's the thing. That love that. Oh, amazing.
But then if I'm going to a local beach, I've got a definite way that I'm going to shoot that. And
you're thinking about it while you're there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's a little bit more circumstantial, but so I tend to change my style a little bit depending on, I love long exposure. I love ultra long exposure. I do 7-10 minute exposures in blue hour or at nautical twilight and that sort of thing.
Wow.
Where you just getting complete flat water, but
so good
in that really dark period where there's just dim light on the horizon, but when you're traveling over that 7 to 10 minutes, you're really capturing some interesting effects.
So true. I had it recently at Kilchurn Castle in Scotland, and we got there 2 hours before sunrise.
Yep.
And I was taking pictures, they were like 2 minutes long, and there was pink stuff. There was pink, like light in the clouds on the horizon. And I was looking at the back of the screen, and I was like, it looks nothing like I'm seeing now because it's pitch black.
That's right.
And this is awesome. Like, it looks unreal. And then I shared this set of 3. I had that, which was like, I called it like pre-sunrise or twilight. And then I had a pre-sunrise where we had a lovely glow. And then I had an actual sunrise. And I was like, there's a whole series of images here, because if you're there long enough, you can capture the whole story, can't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Very addictive.
That's one of the things that I love doing, is getting getting there nice and early, not trying to rush. And for me, because they're the first images of the day, those 7 to 10 minute things, they really make you slow down, because once that shutter's open, there's nothing to do for 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got to hope your horizon's straight, that you got your composition right. That's it. You're done. Yeah.
You also can't really see anything either. So
no, yeah, it's pitch black. You got your head torch on, your red light and everything. Yeah, it's a good time of day, I think. I love it.
Absolutely. What is success in photography for you?
Ooh. I see success as capturing an image that means something to you and solely having that intention of not worrying about what others think and capturing a special something. So for me, it was when I captured the last image of my seasonal collection, a winter version of the same scene I captured in spring, summer, autumn. To me, that was like I guess a local success. It was, for me, that was a project that I feel like I've not completed, but I've got to a point where I'm really happy and I'm quite proud of it. Success is a hard one though, because I also, everyone does. You like it when like if someone says they really like an image, like that means a lot to me, especially if someone buys a print. So every time I sell a print and I'm like, oh wow, you're actually going to put that on a wall in your house. Like to me, that's like, that blows my mind, because I'm like, that's a big decision for someone to do. They might have pictures of their children or grandchildren on the walls, but you're going to have one of mine on your wall. I'm like, sometimes it doesn't compute in my head, but I guess that's a version of feeling like a sense of achievement. Like you feel quite proud when someone wants something physical.
Yeah. So what about failure and setbacks? How do you deal with those and how do you learn from them? You mentioned it earlier. You can get in there and you don't nail things. How do you recover from that and how do you learn from it?
Oh, I think always having the end goal, and that's where it goes back to setting the goals, is really important, because if you have a setback or if you go out for 3 mornings in a row and don't get anything, as long as you're thinking about that final photo and that one day you'll get it, I don't really get, what's the word, demotivated. I'm always motivated to get it. The only time I feel set back or something is like when it's tough conditions, like if it's clear blue skies and it's like summer months and they're really long days. But then what I've started doing over the last few years, and especially since I've been full-time, is working to the conditions. So if it's clear skies, I'll have a certain project in mind. Maybe I do some long exposures. Maybe I focus on light. So I'm not even facing the sun for 8 hours of the day. I'm focusing on light on the rolling hills or something. So having little projects, little motivational goals helps you a little bit to get past those. But I've never had like a photography rut for 6 months where I've not been out. Like I've not had that yet. It's more like feeling demotivated with weather or something. But as long as you make the most of it, like, or a 3 a.m. start, they are tough. Honestly, the heather at the moment is looking stunning, and it looks good at sunrise and sunset. But sunrise, you get the chance of mist, and it's I'm gonna give it a go. But for me, especially when I'm with clients, I'm like, we've got to get there at least an hour and a half before. And that means getting in the spot for an hour and a half. That doesn't mean getting in the car park when it's a half an hour walk. So then it's okay. So that's an hour and a half before, half an hour to set up, feel comfortable, and an hour before the main event as such. So it means getting to the car park half an hour before that, getting up half an hour before that. So like your 4:30 sunrise turns into 2 o'clock start, and it's that is tough. So I can't do too many of those. I could probably do 3 or 4 in a row. But doing like a full week of that would absolutely destroy me. It's so tough.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I'm really interested in is how you look at creating a unique image, but balancing that with staying true to what you're actually seeing and the nature. Because I talked about that some of the ultra long exposures and whatever, people are never going to see that, but it's something, it's an effect that you can create with the tool. And I guess for me, it's definitely a balancing act. To be honest, the more popular image is always going to be the one that people can relate to more. So if you're creating something that looks a bit like an alien landscape, they might go, wow, that's amazing, but they're not necessarily going to buy it to put it on their wall, for example.
That's a really good point. There's a complete difference. Like my most popular prints are not my most favorite photographs, but they're location. But they're locations that mean something to that person or those people. So you've got to have like a a good balance of it, I think. But yeah, it's a difficult one, really. But I think having a balance of your visions, a balance of your locations, like where I live in Dorset, there's honeypot locations that we call them everywhere. You've got Corfe Castle, Durdle Door, Old Harry Rocks, even some of the Woodlands now. There's a place by me called Moor Critchell that's like my go-to spot. And people were photographing it way before me. And it's one of those that's just like, it will always be so photogenic. I'm not one of those that are like, get bored of shooting the same location 5 times in a year, because it's always different. So I'm one of those that just gets enthusiastic about everything. And people that follow me will know I get super excited about all sorts of things. So when I'm doing live videos, my voice will go squeaky. I'll just be in the moment, like I'm like a child. But I just love it. And I think being able to capture something unique is always really fun and challenging. But it doesn't have to be a unique composition. It could be unique weather. Yeah. So whether it's that side light with a dark, moody sky behind something iconic like Corfe Castle, to me, that's still a really unique image. It doesn't matter that the subject's photographed thousands of times. It's that 2 seconds, you might be the only one there on the hill, and you got that photo and no one's going to take it again.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't get too worried about those cliche shots, and especially if I go to somewhere new. So like I was recently up in the Peak District with my friend Nigel, and he took me to some of his amazing locations with Heather, and there was loads of photographers, like 8-10 people at sunrise.
Yeah,
it just didn't bother me. I was like, this is awesome. Like, we're all here for the same thing. Like, we love photography. So I'm like, you feel really lucky to be there with people that appreciate it as well.
Absolutely.
And it was a popular spot, but I was like, I've never been here before. We've got an hour till sunrise. I'm just going to go full open mind. I've not seen any pictures of what it looks like. Let's just try. And for the first time, see what it does. And I like that sometimes. Just putting yourself somewhere new and seeing what you can get from it is a really good challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think people that say, oh, you shouldn't necessarily shoot some of the honeypot locations and whatever, wrong, because
it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Yeah.
What you can, it's not about necessarily what you're shooting, it's about what you do with it, and where you point the camera, and then, as you said, you can change it simply by
there's so much you can do to one
on
photo.
Tripod, or changing the angle that you're standing at.
Yeah.
Make your own.
Yeah, we see it all the time on workshops. That I only do really small workshops. So I have three people with me, so it's a really small group. But I like it because everyone gets like a 1-to-1, and we might all be standing in a row. But when I go around to everyone, we've all got completely different photos. Whether it's focal length, whether it's the positioning, the composition. They might be photographing a little bit of light that I didn't even see because they're looking at something. And I love that. I find the biggest challenge, and we do it on the workshops. We get everyone in a row, and I say, put whatever lens you want on, whatever your eye goes to first, focus on it and make a photo of it.
Yeah.
And every time, each person's is completely different.
Yeah.
There's not one that's the same. And I find that so fascinating because you are stood like a meter apart. It's like, it's so powerful.
I've seen exactly the same thing. Not necessarily organized. You're all facing the same way. You're all pointing the camera ostensibly at the same subject.
And that's just the technical side of things, right? That doesn't even include when you get back to Lightroom or Capture One and you start processing, someone does one style and then another style. So there's so many variables. I love it. Landscape photography, just photography is awesome, isn't it? God, absolutely. I could talk about it forever. I love it.
Let's change topics slightly and talk about the lifestyle choice, full-time photography. How did you make that choice? What was it that drove the decisions? And I guess what made you actually take that step of giving up full-time work and moving into photography?
Yeah, so it's always been a thing that's played on my mind. When I was in full-time work, my holidays weren't holidays, they were photography days. Every season, especially bluebell season, I'd go to my boss and say, look, boss, I want 2 weeks off to go photograph the bluebells. And he'd be like, you're going to do what? Like, most people bank their holiday to go to, I don't know, Greece or something, and I'm going to go spend 2 weeks in a woodland at 5 a.m. So that was when I started to realize that if I'm willing to take my holidays and do it for photography, it's am I in the wrong career? I didn't know, but because I love architecture, but photography was my, like you said, your flow state. And I was like reading so many motivational books and audiobooks at the time, and everyone was saying, if you can do your flow state for as long as possible, and if you can make it your job, you're going to have a much happier life. And it got to a point where we had quite a stressful few years, myself and my fiance. We had a few people that passed away, and it was a bit of a reality check. And it was that pre-COVID time and during COVID, and it was a big reality check. And we had that thought, and I was like, I'm not happy in my job. Like I come home and I'm exhausted and I just want to go to bed. I'm like, that's not right. I'm mentally drained. And when I'm out with a camera, I'm not even thinking about it. Yeah. So I realized very quickly, like my mental state was not good. And it was at that point that I'm really lucky that Rihanna, my fiance, is so supportive, and she kept pushing me. And loads of my friends were pushing me as well, saying, look, Jack, you enjoy this so much, push yourself a little bit. And we all have imposter syndrome, right? It's the biggest thing. Yeah. I have it so bad, and
I think it's a useful tool sometimes, though.
Yeah, it's a struggle, right? But sometimes it does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, for me, the tension between I'm not good enough versus, gee, I'm actually not bad at this.
Yeah,
because I rarely will say. I'm certainly never going to say I'm an expert.
Yeah, me too. I'm learning every single time I'm out with the camera. But that's my impression. Yeah,
yeah. To me, that tension between the negative thoughts that your brain is saying, "Oh, your work's not good enough, nobody's interested," etc., etc., versus some of the feedback that you actually get. And one of the things that has really worked for me is sitting there and saying, okay, I know that if I'm consistent enough and that if I'm going to do this as a living, then I've got to actually have confidence in myself, enough confidence in myself that I can do it. But I use that negativity to say, okay, if I'm not happy with something, what is it that I'm not happy with? And is it something technical that I'm doing wrong? Is it the edit that I just did or whatever? For me, it's really around using that to actually learn and grow rather than drag you back and say, all right, well,
that's so good.
Going to give it all up.
Yeah, that's such a good way of looking at it. I've never thought of it that way. That's really good because you can use it to motivate you, can't you? So
absolutely, yeah. But I think that tension is important between the two, between the oh my God, I'm brilliant, and oh my God, I'm
yeah. It's so true because you don't want to be one or the other. So you've got to stay humble and just enjoy doing what you're doing and be you, right? Yeah, it's so important. So that all happened, and I very quickly realised I was selling calendars at the time and prints. And I had loads of people ask me for one-to-one tuition and Jack, can I join you on all these amazing places you go to? And I kept putting it off for 2 or 3 years because I was always scared of coming across with someone that knows way more than me. And I'm like, oh my God, you're paying me more than me. That's such a fear to me. And I very quickly realized, I was like, oh, they're coming out because they want to spend time with you. Like they want to see what you do as a photographer. So like I'll take my camera setup when I'm on tuition and workshops because they want to see how I work, and I'll make sure they're getting the photos first, but I'll take a photo. And if I find a composition that I really like, first thing is come on over here. I'll talk you through how I found this. I'll move my camera out of the way. We'll get you set up. So they feel like they're there with me on a shoot. And I started by launching like 2 or 3 workshops, and me and my fiance sat down and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to sell one space. This is going to be terrible. And I was so nervous. And then within 30 minutes, they all sold out. And I was like, what is going on? What is this? And then we were talking, and I agreed with my work to go down to 3 days a week. This was about 1.5 years ago. And then I could do not 2 days because it'd be 4 days a week photography, 3 days full time. And then my fiance just said, Jack, you're a month away from going part time. Why don't you just quit? And for me, that was quite a push. I was like, one of my friends had started a business at the time, one of my best friends, and I saw how better he was mentally, and he was really enjoying himself. He was getting more family time, and he was just really happy with himself. And I was like, okay, that's really inspiring. So I launched loads of workshops and arranged loads of talks, tuition. I've been really lucky with brands that have supported me since the very start. So I messaged them. I was like, look, I'm looking to go full time. We started planning like loads of work together. And then I quit August last year. So it's literally been 1 year and 12 days since I've been full time. And it's honestly been the best thing I've ever done for my mental health, my career, my learning, and everything. So it's difficult. It is really, that's the biggest question I get is how do you make money as a photographer? That's the biggest thing. So I have like a like a big net of different types of income. So I don't limit myself to just workshops or something. There's about 12 different revenue streams that I focus on, and I find that's really important. So if one of them gets quiet, I'll go 110% into 6 others, and it's a balance. It's tough, but as you have to balance things out and focus on different things at certain times.
Absolutely. And as you say, when one revenue stream sort of starts to dry up, you need to focus on some of the others.
Yeah. It's just that's, you've got to treat it as like a business, and I that's where I'm a bit weird, because I love business and I love marketing, and so I think that's where I'm quite fortunate for me when it comes to the photography, because I don't mind doing those things. If I have to spend a week at a computer planning, forecasting, doing admin, I'm in my element. So I'm still doing my favorite thing, and I can still go out for a sunset for an hour on my own, or go with a client for 4 hours. I don't see it as a chore yet. I'll say that yet, because it's only been a year and a half full time. It's probably been about 5 years part time. But a lot of people don't actually realise that they realise I was full time at the time. But I'd get loads of messages after I went full time where people were like, "Jack, I thought you were doing this full time anyway," because I was out 3 or 4 times while working. And I very quickly had a lot of conversations. I was like, "Oh no, I was working like 40, 42 hours a week and doing this
on the side."
Yeah. So for the last 4 or 5 years, you're actually doing 2 or 3 jobs, right? And a lot of people don't realize that. It's not like a switch that just goes. You don't go, "Oh, do you know what? I'm going to do this full time," and then you just start. It's like you've got to build up to it, like big time.
Yeah, you've got to do it in a considered way.
Yeah, big time.
I think what you touched on, loving the business side, needs to be. It's a critical part of running it as a business. Is if you don't love that side of it, then you're not necessarily going to do it successfully, because those things are the ones that you're going to put off, but they may actually be the very important things that you need to get
exactly
as a business.
Yeah, because loads of people said to me that, "Oh, you like after about 6 or 7 months, they're like, oh, you're not going out as much for yourself? How are you finding it now that it's a job? It's not like a hobby." I was like, I've not noticed a single difference. Like, I'm still going out, but I get to share it with other people, and that's more special than me going out on my own.
Absolutely.
So I see it really differently. So for me, I'm like, if I can, I had a client come over from Australia, for instance, Sue. She came over last September, and she was over for a month, and we did a few one-to-ones together. And it was just awesome taking her to all these places she grew up, but from a different perspective, from a photographer's eye. Nice. And she managed to get all these amazing pictures. And I was like, that is more important to me than me going out on my own and getting a really good sunrise. Yeah. I want to share it with other people. So yeah, it's inspiring. I love it.
Fantastic. What do you think is the most important thing in terms of the marketing side of things and marketing your personal brand? Because you are the business and your images are the business. What's the most important thing that you could pass on to somebody and say, if you're going to do anything, do this in marketing yourself? Yeah.
I think be you. Don't have a persona, like just be yourself. And if you're doing it for all the right reasons, you'll make something of it. I think if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you'll very quickly realize that you're either money orientated or follower orientated or something, or you're chasing likes and things. Like, get that all out of your head, find what you love. And it's the same for anything. It doesn't have to be photography.
No.
What do you do where 8 hours pass and you haven't thought about anything else? That's where you should channel your time. And if it's photography, amazing. Like, just be yourself. And especially on social media, it's so tricky to stand out, especially now. Like 4 or 5 years ago, it was a little bit easier, but now it's really hard because there is some incredible photographers online that are still doing it as a hobby. And I'm like, you're like 10 times better than me.
Yeah.
But they might not enjoy the business side of things, and they don't know how to market themselves. And you don't have to be the best photographer. You have to be a good photographer, a good marketer, a good business leader, everything in one. It's a tricky thing to do for a job. But I think as long as you're online and you're sharing your photos for you, you're not keeping up with trends and things. That's probably my best advice. Yeah. It's a tricky one though, because you want to be seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whether you have a specific style or a specific kind of theme, maybe it is woodlands, maybe it's seascapes, maybe it's long exposures, black and white. If you have a niche, then I think that's a really good thing. I think I don't really have a niche, but if I did, it'd probably be the seasons, be like that's all I'm thinking about every month. I won't go to a certain location. If it doesn't work for that season, I'll think about going back in another time of year. Or so maybe that's my little thing I'm working on. I don't know too much, but yeah, have those visions and goals and just be yourself, really.
Yeah, wonderful. One of the things that a lot of people struggle with is maintaining their creative vision and artistic integrity, but also catering to commercial or client demands. It's a little bit easier in landscape photography because if you've got your style and people like your style, then selling that. But I guess for me, certainly one of the revenue streams is commercial photography, whether it's real estate or something else. And yeah, got to admit, I'm less excited about that style of photography than I am landscape. Yeah. How do you keep that balance, and how do you keep your artistic integrity whilst dealing with your commercial demands?
Like your bread and butter stuff kind of thing. Yeah. This is tricky. I'm quite fortunate where like the landscape photography thing on my side is my main thing, but I still dabble with, so like architectural photography is like what I was doing a lot of time for my practice and other practices at the time of transitioning. So that would allow me to do things that would buy gear and do that. That was like a little bit of bread and butter on the side. Whereas now that's like really tapered off just because I have to value my time in a different way, so I can pick and choose what I get up to. But yeah, so I think as long as you're still doing what you enjoy, but if you have to do a day a week where it's something you don't enjoy as much, but it allows you to do the other thing, just do it. You just get into a state, right? If you have to go photograph this thing, but the other 6 days of the week, you get to live your dream. I'll do that thing like a snap of a finger. Yeah. Of course I would. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
It's funny. Corporate event photography is one of the things that I've done a little bit of, and for me, I actually approach that in very much the same way as I am with my landscape photography, in terms of I want to get a balanced composition and I want to get the lighting, so moving around the room.
Transferable skills, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and that for me is one of the things that I've learnt out of this, is that it's not where my heart is, it's not where my passion is, but there's money in it.
Yeah, if it can pay for you to do your passion, like no brainer, right? Exactly. You've still got a camera in your hand. And I think, like you say, transferable skills is so important. Like I found that with wildlife photography now. Like now I'm, it's different lenses and things and different apertures and different shutter speeds to what I'm used to. But the processing side of things, all my processing skills, I'm putting into this.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I'm getting an image that is a Jack Lodge image, but it's of a fox or it's of a barn owl. Yeah. And like that's really important, is having those transferable skills. And it's the same with architectural photography. Like I'll approach a building, whether it's a luxury home or anything, completely different to like a real estate photographer or anyone that's going in wide angle in the corner of the room, the general Joe shots. I'll be there and I'll be like focusing on an angle or a bit of concrete that the architect designed to be joining perfectly with a bit of timber, and there's a lovely like 5mm gap. That will get me excited, and I'll photograph that. And then the architect will see the image. They'll be like, Jack, that took me 3 months to design that, and you wouldn't have even seen it in a normal photograph. So thanks so much for capturing it. And it's
thanks for the
thanks for actually showing how hard that is, or that shadow gap or something. Yeah, and it's just having an eye for something a little bit different. And I think I wouldn't have that unless I train to become an architect. I never finished my degree, so I couldn't be called an architect, but I did my BA honours. And I think as I was training, that's helped me with that side of photography. So I see the building from the architect's perspective, not, okay, how do I sell this room to a client? So transferable skills is so important across everything, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. One of the things everybody struggles with in doing either commercial photography or particularly in landscape photography and selling landscape photography is pricing your work. Now, I'm not asking you for actual numbers here. What is there a formula that you've used to set your pricing, or just looking at what everyone else does and following that? How do you price your work?
Yeah, well, so like from prints to workshops, the whole kind of thing. I think a lot of the time is market research. So the same with any business. Like I call them like competitors, but they're not. Like
Yeah.
in photography, like we're all really close, like friends. So like just see what everyone else is doing, and I'll make a big brainstorm, and I'll see what someone's offering, and maybe they charge X for 6 people. So I'll be like, okay, if I'm doing the similar service but for 3 people, so they get more time, maybe I can charge X plus 20%, 30%. So
Yep.
You're working out how can you stand out from everyone else, because there's no point seeing other business models and being like, I'm going to copy that one because that works, or they're always out, I'm going to copy that, because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So I like to map out what I'm doing, where I value my time, and then see what the rate is that everyone charges, and think, okay, how much do I value my time? Like, how much am I going to charge, or how am I experienced compared to that person? Or it's good to have that comparison thing, but other than that, it's more, it's a difficult one, really. Prints is hard because print sales is really difficult to get someone to realize, like, they're not paying for a £10 print, they're paying for a £250 print.
Yeah.
And they forget that it costs 20 quid. It's £25 worth of paper and ink.
Yeah.
And it's 6 months to get that photo.
And like, way more if you wrap a frame around it, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a whole other story with museum glass and everything. They'll be paying the same for the print as they would the frame, right?
Exactly.
You're either selling your 10 grand prints to a certain client, or you're selling £100 prints to another client. It's completely different.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. It's really difficult, but I think having an awareness of what's going on is really important. You can't.
I think another thing that's really important, and it's been mentioned a couple of times by other people on the podcast, is knowing your customer and knowing who you're actually selling to. And obviously somebody that's running a large corporate, if you're doing something for a corporate foyer or something like that, or a block of flats or something, then the pricing there is going to be way different to a bloke that's Joe Blogs that comes along and says, I love your print, I want a medium-sized one on the wall. And his budget's definitely going to be different to the corporate.
Yeah, it is. You got to know that, right? Because
absolutely,
you don't want to screw yourself over.
No way.
Like, and it's so difficult. So I find that where I am, like, everyone's really helpful and open. So when I was going full time, like, loads of other full-time professionals I'd ask questions to, and we just have conversations like this, and it's really insightful, because then you'll be like, oh, you got paid X to do this by this brand, they're offering me this. Are they being sneaky, or do they value me less? And then you might go back with a different offer and they'll accept it, and you're like, oh, you were just trying to be sneaky. Like, you don't know. Like, it's business, right?
They're trying to get it for the least possible price.
Exactly. You know? That's how business works. So you can't be angry with it. You got to be like, oh, fair enough. Like, you got to be I do the same.
It's just a different case if you go back to them with the higher price and they go no.
That's different, because then you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not that good. Like, maybe you get a little bit of a stab in the chest kind of thing. But
9 times out of 10 they'll say yes, and happy days.
Exactly. Yeah, but it is difficult. The ones I struggle with the most are, like you were saying, with the commercial stuff. If someone comes to me and says, I had it recently where they're building a new shop front in the town centre, and they're like, we want your image 2 by 2 meters. We're putting an ATM in the wall, and your image is going to be around it. Give us a quote. And I was like, I have no idea. They were printing it. Like, they just wanted the image license, and I didn't even know where to start. I was like, is it £100? Is it £5,000? I have no idea.
For a 2 metre by 2 metre, I'd be asking maybe 10, 15K.
Yeah, like, exactly. And it ended up being a really well-paying thing. And it was like, if I didn't think about it too much, I could have really damaged myself. And that's where I'm really thankful for having a good network of people around me. Because one person would say, Jack, you need to be charging 10 grand, 5 grand, whatever. And another one would be like, I do similar, or they bring you down to earth a little bit. So you got to be aware of your surroundings in business, right?
Absolutely.
And it's all about how you manage your time. What is your goals? I always set myself goals for 5 years. The minute I had a 1-year goal, I've got a 2-year goal, 5-year, and a 10-year. And if I want to get to that 10-year goal, what do I have to earn a day to get to that goal? Or what do I have to earn a month to get to that goal? And then almost working like backwards, because we've all got like 30, 31 days in a month, right?
Yep.
So we all have the same time, and it's how do you value that time?
How you value it and how you spend that time makes a big difference. Yeah.
Exactly. And I always joke with my friends, it's like they say, oh, Jack, you quit an 8-hour-a-day job to do a 16-hour-a-day job. And I was like, yeah, but I'm so much happier. I don't care if I work till midnight on an article.
It's a lifestyle.
I'm talking about photography. It's a lifestyle. Love that. It's exactly, yeah. I left a job to double my hours but live a lifestyle, right? That's what right. It is, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about where you live, and you mentioned obviously there's a lot of honeypot locations there around Dorset. Is there one particular spot that you just keep going back to? And it doesn't even have to be in Dorset; it could be elsewhere.
Yeah, there's loads. Honestly,
draws you back.
There's loads. Yeah, there's so I live in a place called Wimborne, which is a lovely like market town, and we're probably, I'd say, half an hour to somewhere like Durdledore, half an hour to somewhere like Salisbury Cathedral, and half an hour to the New Forest, and half an hour to somewhere like Portland. So my net is ridiculous in terms of locations I can get to really quickly. Yeah. And that was so important. And I think quite lucky, because I've always lived here, so I never really realised it until I started doing photography. I was like, oh, it's only half an hour drive. That's all right. So for me, there's a place called Moor Critchell that I'm obsessed with. It's an avenue of lovely young beech trees that are perfectly straight. And for me, in the seasons, it's like in autumn, it's golden red. It's like dark orange red. In fresh spring greens, it's like luscious, like yellow green. And in the winter, like if I'm really lucky, we've got snow there once, and I managed to get a photograph of it that took years to get, but I was ready. And that's a go-to. Likely Corfe Castle. I've probably been to Corfe Castle. I think, yeah, Nigel Danson asked me once how many times I've been to Corfe Castle, and it was for one of his videos, and I ended up actually going on Lightroom and checking, and I think it was something like 35 times. And I was like, that's a lot of times in 6 years. Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe I do go there quite often, but I might have only got it in the mist, the iconic mist, 3 or 4 times. So your hit rate is tiny. Like yesterday looked like it was going to be, and the day before, misty there. It wasn't. Like it was like, you never know. I have a few locations in my go-tos.
You sometimes get there and the mist is the wrong type of mist, because it's
covering it turns to actual fog.
Yeah, it's covering the top of the hill. You can see the mound, but you can't see the castle, for example.
There's no castle. We call them like pea supers, and you get there and it's just everything's grey. You can't see a thing. But we've had that before, and if we stay there for 2 hours, it will drop and the light comes through.
That's it.
But then it might go from 20 people on the hill to 3. And it's, then... But then, to be honest, you don't know if those other 18 have got to go to work, which I used to do.
That's it. Yeah.
It's life, right? So some people have to go to work or drop the kids off. So it's so difficult for everyone to get a shot if they can't commit the time. And I've been there. I did it for 6 years where I was full-time in work. So I know the struggle of getting a picture when you can't commit all of your time to it.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I'm keen on hearing from you is whether or not where you live has influenced how you shoot. It obviously influences what you shoot, because you've got so many locations you can get to. But I'm interested is what comes first. Is it the what and then the how, or is it the how then the what?
Interesting. I actually think you're onto something there, because the way I approach locations where I am is I really take my time, or I wait for some ethereal conditions. And when I'm away, I've never thought of this till you asked this question, but I'll do the same. So I went up to Snowdonia with Nigel and Maz last September, and we were going to go to all the same locations, but I ended up getting distracted by this really nice Roman bridge. So I just go off on my own and go there. I think I went there 3 mornings in a row, and they thought I was crazy. They're like, "Oh, Jack, you got the picture. What are you doing?" Like, yeah, but it wasn't foggy, and the water wasn't the right height, and I was off with the composition by a little bit. So I went back the next day, and it was rubbish. And then I went back the 3rd day, and it was amazing. The mist was coming off the river, and I was like, "Oh, this is like so worth it." But I was only there 5 days, and 3 of those mornings I went to the same spot, and that's what I would do at home. So now you've said it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a bit of a reality check. Maybe that is what I do. So I think going back to the same location is one of my things where I will do it if needed, and I don't really get bored of it. It's just got to be, the conditions have got to be right. And I think if they're local to you, that's obviously a lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It snowed only for me is about a 5-hour drive, which you're from Australia, so that's nothing. That's going to the shops, right? That's
Well,
for me, that's an effort. Like,
I'll drive an hour and a half to get a cup of coffee.
wow, see, that's nuts, isn't it? I had a client, the client from Australia said the same thing. She's like, you can get to Scotland in 8 hours. I'd have to take 3 flights or a 5-day road trip. And I'm like, oh, that's put it into perspective. We are quite lucky. Yeah. But yeah, you approach. I approach every location like I do at home. I want the right conditions. I want to get there early. And I think now that I'm full time, I've managed to venture out a lot. Whereas when I was full time with my work, I was very much Mr. Dorset. Like it'd be amazing if I left and took photos. People would be like, "Oh, you at the same location again?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I've got to go to work in an hour. So if I'm going to go to a place like Knowlton Church 3 days in a month, I will because it's on my way to work." But whereas now I'm like I've just got back from where did I go? I went up to Edinburgh, went down to the Peak District, and then next month I'm off to Glasgow, and I've got some exciting trips in Europe coming up. But now I can commit the time. I'm going to treat them a little bit like I do at home and get very much into. I need to look at the weather apps and think about where am I going to go in what conditions. Like, not just go on Monday. I'm going to go here, Tuesday here, Wednesday here. I won't do that. I'll get to a place and I'll check the weather and go, this place will look better in the sun. This place will look better when it's cloudy. And I'll be very weather dependent on my location choices.
Yeah. What's your most memorable experience out shooting?
Oh, the Bluebell Wood Dreams is an image that I sell. And for me, that is the image that's special to me mainly because that's the one I took 2 weeks off for work on holiday for. And it took me so long to get. It was 7 mornings in a row that I did in spring. And it's a woodland I know really well. I've known it for years and we go for dog walks around there. But in the spring, you do get these lovely green beech trees, but you also get the fresh bluebells come through from the floor. And for me, I really wanted it in the fog. I got quite fussy. I was like, I need the fog, but I also need the light. So I need more of a mist fog and then the light to come through. And I went back like 4 mornings. I went for 4 mornings in a row. There was nothing. I took the 5th morning off. I then went back on the 6th, nothing. And each time I stood in exactly the same spot. Like I'm pretty sure my tripod holes are probably still there in the ground. Like I've been so much that I swear it's like a mark. So I kept going back. And then the 7th morning, my friend messaged me on his way to work. He was like, Jack, it looks quite foggy on the road. Maybe you should give it another go. And I was like, yeah, fine, let's go for it. I was up at 4 o'clock anyway, went out and it happened. And it was the last day. And for me, it was so special because I actually had the shakes. And I think my live video is still on Facebook. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. But every now and then I'll watch the video and I'll be like, I'm transported straight back to that moment. And every time I print it, all those memories come flooding back. Like I remember how cold it was. I remember the warmth on my face when it came across from the side, or I remember what lens I was using, everything. Like it just all floods back. So yeah, that's probably my most favorite moment as a photographer.
Awesome. What about horror stories?
Oh, horror stories. Yeah. So there's a place by me called Knowlton Church, and it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Dorset. And I've heard some weird stories from people that have been there, but I never quite believed it. I was like, oh yeah, okay, like it's what it is. People are just being spooky. But I once went there for sunset, and there's this cluster of trees at the back, and people hang ribbons and dolls off it, and it's weird. But I was stood there with my tripod, getting a picture of the church, and everything was secure. It was all set up as normal, and all of a sudden, my camera fell straight off the ball head and just fell lens down on the grass. And I was like, this is weird. Did I not secure it? But I picked it up. The lens was fine, and put it on the tripod ball head, and everything was locked in place. Like I was like, if I can't put the camera back on the ball head, how's it come off? It just really freaked me out. And since then I've never been back in the trees. Like I wouldn't go back in there. It freaks me out a little bit. My friend and I went there for the aurora, and he said he saw the trees bend backwards, like a person, like bent backwards, and he almost ran back to the car. I was like, okay, yeah, this is not a place I'll come on my own in the dark. Like, that's not okay. So there's been a few little horror stories like that.
What's the practice of photography taught you about nature?
Oh, to capture how quickly it changes. Like every season, if I get to see the same places in each season, it changes so much. And over the years that I've been doing it, everything grows or collapses, right? Like the trees I've been photographing for the last 4 or 5 years are getting bigger. They've got extra branches. They're looking different. The cliff faces around the south coast are collapsing like all the time. Like in West Bay, we have cliff slides like every other week. It's ridiculous. It's crazy dangerous for one, because people always walk up to it. But two, like the composition that we take changes every single time because the formations are changing. And I think that's what photography's taught me, is to capture the change of everything that's going on. Because I then think, oh, okay, I'm 30 in January. When I'm 50 and I'm still doing this, what's that avenue of trees going to look like? Like all our images nowadays, we all shoot raw, right? So like in 20 years, I could take that raw file and edit it from scratch again with the style that I've adopted when I'm 50. But also look at it side by side with a picture 20 years ago. And that really excites me. I'm really excited about that because everything changes so quick. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're actually doing more than just capturing a moment. We're actually documenting the planet. I'm only in a small part of it. Everyone else around the world is capturing nature. And who knows what it's going to look like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I find that really fascinating.
People that have been doing walks in mountainous areas where there's glaciers.
Exactly.
If we keep going in 20 years, there won't be any glaciers.
Exactly. And like the icebergs, like imagine photographing an iceberg and next year that iceberg might not be there. You've captured a once in a lifetime thing, or that one polar bear. You don't know the story behind that polar bear. I find it so fascinating. Photography is crazy powerful. When you think about it, it's not just a lens and a camera. There's so much more behind it. It's so deep, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, my brain just goes off in a tangent right there. I'm like, oh my God, what I'm doing is actually crazy. Like when you think about it, it's not a snap, it's a thing.
One of the other things you've mentioned a bit is throughout this is that sense of community and collaboration. How do you see that, being able to foster that and support and learn from our peers in the field? Because to me, one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is to learn as much as I can from all sorts of different people about why, not only why they do what they do, but a little bit about how they do what they do. And so for me, this is my way of fostering a bit of community. But I'm interested in your take on how that gets done and how you see yourself participating in that community.
Yeah, no, really good question. I'm quite lucky. There's loads of photographers where I am, but also all over the UK, and we all get on so well, and we learn from each other. We'll message each other and go, "Oh, Jack, did you think about cropping this image to look like this?" And then I'll look at it and be like, "Oh, that image is 10 times better." Like I didn't see that, but it's so important to get constructive criticism. I think constructive criticism is super important, because if someone goes, you get it in competitions all the time, right? An image will win the competition, and someone will say, "Oh, I don't like that image." I'm like, what do you mean you don't like it? Look past what you're thinking. There's a deeper meaning to that image, right? So in our field, like I always feel like we can always learn from each other. So the sense of community for me is so important. There's a guy called Andy Farrer that kind of, I say he took me under his wing, but he is my Yoda. Like when I started, he's like, I messaged this random print company about doing a print for me. He replied and he said, "Oh yeah, come on in. I'll take you through the print process." And it said, "Kind regards, Andy Farrer." And I was like, oh my God, that's the guy like I look up to. So like from that point onwards, we've become great friends, and he's one of my groomsmen. Like in November, like we're so close. Fantastic. And he's, to me, I really look up to him and loads of other people now. And I just love being part of that community. And it goes from other photographers all the way down to people that just like my work. So I'll be on a first name basis with hundreds of people on my Facebook or something. And I feel like we have a personal connection. Like I feel like they know me. Like I know them. They know the name of my son that's 3 months old. Like it's more than just sharing a photo and hitting that like button. To me, it's building that connection. And I think maybe that's what's helped me get to doing this full time, is not posting a picture and running. I really don't like that. If someone takes the time out of their day to photo and comment on it, I need to take time out of my day to like their comment and reply to their comment, have a conversation with them, like message them saying, "Oh, thank you so much. Like really appreciate you like actually taking time to look at the image." Like to me, that's really important. So community is a big thing for me, I think. Whether that's 100 people or 100,000 people, like, it's just taking the time out to be yourself and to look up to others, and also to share your passion and just be yourself, really.
Yeah, totally. Where do you see the future of photography going, and what do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
Oh, see, I see the future as so exciting. I get this. I get a lot of people ask me this on workshops, and they're like, "Are you scared of AI and like all these sky replacements of Photoshop?" I'm like, no, because like,
no,
you'll never replace real photography and like capturing nature for what it is. Like, I've used Photoshop like 15 years, and in architecture, I used to make buildings in Photoshop. So like, I could do crazy things in Photoshop with my images, but I don't, because that's not what I enjoy. I enjoy capturing the moment. So if it takes me a week to get that sky or the mist, I'll wait a week. I won't just add it. So the thing that scares me is people that are adding things and trying to pass it off as photography. I'm like, there's such a fine line. Like, digital art is amazing, but please keep it very separate to photography.
Yeah, like, as long as you're up front and say this is digital art, this is a composite.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. If it is, if you say, I took 3 of my images, made this, I ran it through AI, I added this, I'm like, yeah, cool, that's awesome. Like, you've made what you were thinking in your head. But that's your own thing. Photography is a completely different thing. As long as they're kept like separate, I'd say that's good. But I think I always think about what's photography going to look like in 20 years. And at the minute, we have like in the museums, right, loads of like classic artwork. Like, I like to think maybe one day the photography doesn't replace the artwork, but the artwork becomes less, and the newer generations see photography as we see art. So maybe there'll be a switch one day where people are like, oh, instead of hanging art on my wall, I'm going to hang this photo on the wall, because that place doesn't look like that anymore, and they caught it in this. And I'd love it to be like that one day. If you go into the Natural History Museum and it's a proper photography gallery, and print, I want print to be more of a thing. I feel it's a real shame. So that social media is such a love-hate thing. I love it, but I hate the fact it's so small. Like,
I'm the same.
Do you know what I mean? You don't. I've got like A2s,
and
A3s
the quality's
on
bad on some platforms.
The quality's terrible, and you get forced to use certain crops, and I'm like, really? That's not creative. So for me, as long as people get to enjoy work in print, I think photography will always have its place, and people will always want to do it and learn it, I think.
What do you like to do when you're not out shooting or editing or running the business?
Oh, God. I don't think I do anything. What do I do? I love playing tennis. So I'm a big tennis player. I used to love tennis. So I used to coach and play it. So I like to play tennis every now and then. Love going out walking, scouting. I guess that's still classes as photography, right? And then spending time with my fiance and my new baby boy. So he's 3 months old. We've had a proper life change. So for me, that's like the best thing. Oh, thank you. Like, so for me, like, he's the best thing ever. Like, just being able to wake up and see his face, like, smile. I'm like, it's motivating for me in the business, and it's also the best thing ever to come home to. So spending time with them and our dog, and just exploring, and bit of tennis, and mainly photography. I live and breathe it. It's nuts. If I'm out and about, like, we're even talking of our like honeymoon for next year, and I'm already thinking, safari would be cool. And I'm instantly thinking what lens I'm going to take. It's not just a safari. It's like I'm thinking about the photos. Like, it's really bad.
I know the feeling. It's an addiction.
Oh, it's terrible. It's an addiction. It really is bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you go out for a drive, you can't go past looking at things without thinking that make a good photo. Or I'll pin that on my maps and I'll go back there in 3 months when the light comes around.
I drove past the dam, and it was middle of the day. The light wasn't great, but had some nice dead trees in it and some reeds that were a sort of a bluey green and whatever. And I thought,
amazing.
I can see a westerly aspect here. That's going to at sunset.
You're instantly thinking, I'll save that place and I'll come back.
So on the way back from where I drove to
you did it?
Drive back, pulled over beside the road.
Love that. That is literally a day in the life of what we do.
Absolutely.
Literally, that is a good example. I love that. Was the photo good? You like the result?
Some of them were pretty good. It got some nice little rain showers off in the distance as the sun was going down as well. So you got that lovely.
Isn't rain one of the best things? Yeah. You always get the best light after a rainstorm.
Absolutely.
And also, photographing in the rain is so underrated.
Definitely.
I think I've probably ran about, 120 odd workshops. in the year, and I think I've only cancelled one because it was torrential wind and rain. But the others that we've had a little bit of rain with, people have been like, Jack, I wouldn't have thought of going to Woodlands and using a polarizer to get the colour and the rain falling through. And we've got some of like my favourite pictures from doing that. And it's Oh, rain's another thing I could talk about for ages. Yeah. So underrated. Yeah.
Not much fun for astro though.
Terrible for astro. Yeah, wouldn't want to do it for astrophotography or long exposures because you'll just be wiping the front element the whole time.
Yeah. Are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Oh, you've done Mr. Shanebloom, haven't you? So he's a god. So Nigel Danton's a good friend of mine. You'd love to have a chat with him. He's got such a good vision. Like he's very like business driven and loves his photography and being outdoors, and he brings them together so well. So he's really good. My friend Andy Farrer, one of the most nicest guys ever, and he's I'd call him like a classical landscape photographer. Like he's graduated filters. Like me, likes to go to a place multiple times, really nice compositions. Who else can I think of? Oh, it's endless. Erin, have you talked to Erin Babnick before?
No, haven't. She's on my list.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my God. Her work is phenomenal. The Death Valley and Dolomites and things like that. That's so inspiring for me. I think the big adventure stuff I'm really into at the minute, like the big mountain stuff, the big vistas, the big panoramas. So anything like that is awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you for those. Last question, and for many of my listeners, it's the most important. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Oh, do you know what I do? Like, I wouldn't. This is a tricky one. I don't order it, but my fiance loves it, and I'll always swap a slice of my meaty pizza for a pineapple slice because I like the refreshness of it. But then I'll go back to eating the meaty one, right?
I can get down with that.
Yeah, okay, good. What are you? Are you a pineapple guy?
I wouldn't order it, but if it's there, I won't say no to it. You know,
exactly. Yeah, I would. I don't know if I'd order. Yeah, definitely wouldn't order it. But
I don't fully. I get. I've spoken to a few Italians, and I get their passion. No, it's not a thing. I get that cultural reasons. For Americans, Australians, and Brits. Yeah,
that freshness, that bit of taste, right?
Yeah.
I love pineapple. I dig it.
There's people that just can't get their heads around that sweet and salty sort of thing.
No, it works well with a bit of ham, good bit of cheese. Yeah, I'm down for it.
All right, it's been absolutely brilliant spending some time with you, Jack. Let people know where they can find your work.
Oh, thank you, Grant. No, thanks so much for having me on board. And you can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, just Jack Lodge, and my website as well is just jacklodge.co.uk. And if anyone's got any way of getting in touch, just drop me a line. I'm an open book, so if anyone's got any questions about anything, just get in touch. And look forward to seeing more of the podcast and being inspired, because that's what it's all about, right? Being inspired by others' journeys and things.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Jack.
Thank you so much, Grant. All right, take care.
You too. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.